Okay. So,
Is it on? There's an on switch on.
everybody hear me?
Barely.
All right. Everybody hear okay?
Very dim one.
Can we turn it up a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody for coming out. My name is David Yetz. As an introduction, I've been a member of California River Course for a long time.
What year were you the chair?
No, I was trying to remember that. I think it was about 10 years ago. It was after Dave Silverstein was president, but I was president maybe about 10 years ago.
But you were also vice president.
That's right. I was vice president under you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
Well, see, the reason I asked is that's when I came in the organization,
Right.
was when you were the chair.
I remember that. Well, a little history on myself. Southern California native. I was born and raised here. And I remember citrus being a lot more prevalent when I was younger. Lemon Grove had lemon trees all over the place, hence the name Lemon Grove. When we would take a trip to Disneyland in Anaheim, it was almost completely surrounded by orange groves and strawberry trees. Go up there now, it's just solid concrete. So
Irvine, by the brown
Irvine,
strip,
yeah, used to have a lot of citrus groves, yeah. And of course, the county of Orange was named after orange trees, the city of Orange, north of us. So about 22 years ago, my wife and I decided we didn't want to live in the city anymore, so moved out to Alpine and bought 4 acres. And since then, since I had keen interest in fruits, I started to slowly but surely plant citrus trees as well as other fruits. And as of now, I've got about almost 200 trees in the ground, citrus trees, and probably about 40 to 50 different varieties. Maybe after the presentation, you can come up and take a look at all these. This is all the fruit that I picked this afternoon before I came. I think there's maybe about 30 different varieties here today. Not everything is perfectly at the right stage of ripeness, but at least we've got a sample of things. And also I brought some fruit in to sample on the table. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We're very fortunate to live in San Diego County because we can grow just about any type of citrus that there is. There's currently 200 to 300 different varieties of citrus. And UCR, University of California Riverside, is kind of the headquarters of the citrus industry, and they have over 200 varieties. I'll talk a little bit more about how you can get some of those varieties from them. Now, let's talk a little bit about the history of citrus itself. Citrus, they think, originated in southern China, and that's where, if you go there today, there'll be some native species of citrus, mandarins, things like that, growing there just naturally. They weren't planted by man, so that's kind of the origin. From there, things spread to Australia and to the Middle East, and eventually things were brought to the United States. But an interesting thing about the genetics, since scientists have started to analyze DNA and things, humans, animals, as well as plants. In 1997, they did some analysis and they found out that the majority of citrus that's partially viable for us is belongs to only 3 different types: the citron, the pomelo, and the mandarin. I think we're all familiar with the mandarin, also known as tangerine, kind of interchangeable as far as the namesake. But let's talk about the citron. The citron is been around for thousands of years. It's even mentioned in the Old Testament Bible. It's a fruit that it's kind of like a lemon, but a thicker skin. Also, the pomelo, maybe not quite as well known as some of the others, but it is more like a grapefruit, but it's not a grapefruit. They're actually larger than grapefruit, and they sometimes can have a rind on it that's maybe an inch thick. So it's kind of a task to peel these things, but it doesn't have any bitterness like the grapefruits do. And the fruit is usually not real juicy, it's a little bit dry. Now, we are familiar with mandarins. There's all sorts of different varieties of mandarins. But from these 3, they believe that we got a lot of other fruits. Now, the the lemon. James, is there a way we can get rid of this banner? The lemon is kind of a newcomer to the citrus. You can see that's a citron parentage with a sour orange over here. And the sour orange looks like it comes from a combination of the pomelo with the mandarin. So, needless to say, it's very complicated. Some of these varieties, there's been crosses and back crosses several times to get certain things. But interesting to note that the orange, which is probably the most famous of the citrus and the most well-known, was not one of the original 3. Now, there's also more than 3, but I'm just pointing out that the majority of the fruit that you get at the supermarket comes from these 3. Now, this is interesting too. The Mexican lime, which you do find in supermarkets and things like that, was one of the parents is the citron, and this one right here is also known as the pepita. Probably no, I've never really seen this one before, but it's native to some of the islands in the Philippines, and so that got crossed with nature. I don't think man did it. I think just naturally some of these hybrids have occurred. But the pepita was crossed with the citron in the Mexican line.
Those are very, very popular Mexican wines.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the history of citrus in California. This really is interesting to me. It goes back to 1873, approximately, when a lady that was a resident of Riverside, California, just a little bit north of there, knew somebody at Washington, D.C. Agriculture Department, and she contacted a source in Brazil and got actually 3 Washington navals shipped to Riverside, California. And so Riverside was the center of the orange industry, and California got more money out of citrus than all the gold from the gold rush and everything like that. It continues to be of economic importance. But that there is actually one tree remaining that was brought from Brazil from 1873. So this tree is about 150 years old. It's still alive, believe it or not. And it's known as the parent Washington navel orange tree. It has a historic landmark. And it is at the corner of Magnolia Avenue and Arlington Street in Riverside.
Still fruity.
Still fruity. Here's a 1910 photo of the tree. You can see it's quite a bit smaller at that time.
So it's a full size. It's,
Yes, it is. It's full size rootstock that allows it to be a full size tree, not a dwarf.
They tend to be stronger when they are full size.
I don't know about that. It depends on the rootstock that it's on. I think a dwarf tree could be just as strong. I went ahead and visited the tree a few years ago, so here I am in front of it. There's some bronze plaques honoring Eliza Tibbetts and things like that. So it's hard to believe, but it's 150 years old. Now here's an interesting thing about it. You might not be able to see the base of it here, but I'll show you another slide of it. But it suffered a fungal disease called foot rot, also known as gummosis. This was quite a few years ago. Okay, here's a better shot of it. So here's 1918. So at that time, this was basically girdled at the bottom, so it wasn't able to take up any water from the soil or transport any nutrients from the leaves down to the roots. So they did a type of grafting in 1918 or so, and it's called in-arch grafting. And this is a 2010 photo right here. You can see these in-arch grafts have grown in considerable size, and they've actually grafted to the trunk of the tree here. But this part right here was the area that is dead and suffered from gummosis. And this is what in-arch grafting entails. You take, in the 1918 grafting session, they took 9 trees that were in pots like this, planted them into the ground around the tree, and put the trunk of the new tree up to the trunk and grafted it. So they used knives to graft it, and so the cambium layers were touching of the new tree and the old tree.
So did they use a process kind of like maybe like a tea budding process, more or less, and get the new rootstock in underneath the bark, under the cambium layer?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Dave. They did do just the typical type of grafting where you match up the cambium layers and then they grow together. All right. So now we'll go through some of the varieties of citrus. And I basically grow all these varieties. There's a few that I don't. I'm hoping to get some budwood from UCR in the future so I can graft and complete my collection of citrus. But one that is kind of has an interesting story and a good all-around backyard citrus fruit is the Meyer lemon. And prior to 1967, I believe, they were sold as Meyer lemon, but there was another disease that was in the Meyer lemon plants when they were sold. It is a type of a virus. And so in 1967, nurserymen developed the improved Meyer lemon. So when you go to a nursery right now, you can't buy the original Meyer lemon. They've pretty much all died out. But you will buy the Meyer improved lemon, which is resistant to the virus. It's the history behind it is that it was a natural hybrid cross between a sweet orange and a lemon. So that's why it's a lot sweeter than, let's say, a Lisbon or one of the other type of lemons, Eureka. If you make lemonade out of this, you do have to have a little bit of sugar, but not so much. And typically, my trees will have flowers and fruit all at the same time. it's a real workhorse. It's producing fruit all the time. You'll get abundance of lemons if you plant a Meyer lemon.
And it's probably the most popular lemon.
I agree. Now, this is one that is relatively new to the trade, and I actually just picked up one of these last week. I was over at Clausen Nursery in Vista, and Gordon, the owner, happened to have a New Zealand lemonade there, and I don't have that in my property, so I bought 5 gallons of this. I have tasted this before, and this is a lemon that does taste exactly like lemonade. You don't have to add any sugar to it. It's amazing. You can eat it. It peels easy. You can eat it out of hand, and it doesn't pucker your mouth like a sour lemon would.
Almost like a sweet lime, but they're kind of insipid.
Yeah. Question was, is it like a sweet lime? And I'll go over those. Sweet limes are very bland. They don't really have any sourness. They don't have any sweetness. They're refreshing in my opinion. You make a nice juice, but it might be very bland. This is not bland. This is, like I said, just like eating pink lemonade juice.
Wow.
So if you have a chance to get this one, go for it. I highly recommend it. Okay, another one that I do grow, which is actually a California product. Here's one that I picked this afternoon. You can see it's got stripes on it. And if I were to cut this open, it does have a pink flesh. So when you use this, it makes pink lemonade. Now, basically, this is a sport, or I believe it's a sport of Eureka lemon. It's not a hybrid. It just happened to form on a Eureka lemon, and I think it was discovered in Burbank, California, so that's not too far from here. And I think it was something like 1960s, I'd say.
That's a standard sour. That's like the standard.
Yeah, this is it. Same as the Eureka lemon, it's going to be sour. So to make lemonade, add some sugar.
Try mixing. You can try the future mixing that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll try that. I'll try mixing the New Zealand with this tomorrow. So the origin of this is that it was somebody brought a cutting or sign wood from New Zealand, because they do grow this commercially in New Zealand. And there was a nursery up here. It's actually a nursery that specializes in camellias. And they happen to have this on the property. And so now they introduced it into the trade a few years ago. All right, Valencia orange. This is your typical juicy orange. So the navel orange is the real winner as far as a eating orange out of hand. It's seedless, easy to peel, wonderful flavor. But the Valencia orange, not so easy to peel, but it makes an excellent juice. So it's the best one for all around winner for juicing, in my opinion. It actually has some type of a preservative in it where the juice will last a lot longer than if you were to juice, let's say, a navel orange or mandarins or anything like that. That's why it's so good at juicing. And they are a lot of juice in these and very little what in the trade they call rag. Rag is the stuff that's left over when you juice something. So this has very little rag and a very large amount of juice. So it is an excellent juicing orange. Question?
This is the other good thing about Valencia is that it ripens in the summer, whereas most of the other things.
That's true. Yeah, ripening is a factor of this. All right. So Smith Red Valencia, one of my favorite trees, very prolific in my yard. I get a lot of produce off of one tree. And this has an interesting story too. It was discovered in 1988. There's a lady, her name was Smith, and she lived in Moore Park, California, which is in Ventura County. She had a Valencia orange growing in the front yard. Just the typical one, you know, with the orange on the inside. But one of the branches had some fruit on it that had this red blush to it. This is one off my tree that I picked this afternoon. You can see the red blush here. And I took the liberty to.
Almost like a blood orange, like a true blood orange.
Yeah, it's not a true blood orange. But it is a Valencia. It is a true Valencia. In my opinion, when I taste this, it has like raspberry overtones to it. But again, being a true Valencia, it makes a really good juice. Just a little bit.
So it has the high juice that the standard Valencia
Yes,
does.
it sure does, because it is Valencia. So the interesting thing about Mrs. Smith, she had I'll share this, she had a neighbor that she kind of disliked, and this tree was growing in the front yard. So she thought that this neighbor was sneaking into her front yard in the middle of the night and injecting her Valencia oranges with some type of poison, I guess. So she called the agriculture department out and, you know, made a claim that her neighbor was doing all this. They came out and looked at our tree and said, no, this is what we call a spore. It occurs naturally. Sometimes nature will, you know, go from red to orange, or orange to red, I should say. So anyway, kind of a cute little story there. So from that one tree, the nurserymen were able to propagate all the trees. And now it's pretty common to find this at your local nursery now. But a real winner, in my opinion. This is one of the citrons. It's called the Buddha's hand citron, and obviously because of the finger-like projectiles on it. This one is more of a oddity, I guess. You can make marmalade out of it, but it really doesn't have any juice. You can make a zest out of it. You can make chutney out of it, but you're not going to juice it or eat it out of hand or like that.
It's the only real good thing besides zest is it's excellent for the pectin. If you want pectin, you take and grate off the rind and then boil down and process your pectin for canning to give your jams and jellies a little bit more sticky togetherness.
All right, good to know. Pectin, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Pectin is really high.
And the pomelos and grapefruits are the same because they have the thick white rind in there underneath the skin.
Okay. Another use that I use mine for, they make a really good deodorizer, I guess. So I'll bring one into the house, and for a week or two, I'll get this really nice fragrance, citrusy, kind of like lemon pledge or something. And they also say that if you do bring it into your house, it brings you good luck.
And that's the etrog down below on the plate next to it. The lower one, which is used in the Jewish festivals at Christmas.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say Christmas, but
It's the Feast of the Tabernacle.
that's correct.
Which usually occurs in October.
They're known for paying up to $100 for a good etrog.
Exactly. Because the etrog citron that they use in the festival has to be perfect.
Yes.
It has to be kosher. And so some of the requirements obviously can't have any blemishes. It has to be the right size. Skin has to be perfect. Also, it cannot be grafted onto a rootstock. So it has to be pure that way. And it can't be any type of a hybrid. So Dave is correct. Sometimes they'll pay a lot of money for one particular fruit because it's perfect. All right, another one of my favorite, because this one makes an excellent juice. It's very unique flavor. It's a cocktail pomelo. hybrid. It does get confused with the grapefruit quite a bit because it looks like a grapefruit, but if you look at the parentage of this, it does not have any grapefruit parent to this. It's a pomelo crossed with a mandarin. So I can't get enough of these. If my neighbors and people that I've given these to, and they made juice, they just want more and more of this because it has a very unique flavor. I did bring a few, so we'll slice them up and you can taste it after the presentation. The only drawback with the cocktail, very seedy.
And a lot of citrus has seeds unless it's bred out.
Yeah, I think the public prefers seedless things. That's why they're more popular. And so, you know, the nurserymen are always, and botanists are always trying to make things seedless. All right, another one that's relatively new on the horizon. This was developed by University of California, Riverside, probably 10 years ago, is Valentine. And it's one of my favorites. Maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I got some budwood from UCR of the Valentine acquisition, and I grafted that onto one of my existing trees. It was a sweet lime. So I now have Valentine growing on one side of the tree and sweet limes on the other. But look at the massive size of these things. This must weigh 2 or 3 pounds at least. And the reason it was given the name Valentine, quite a few reasons. It ripens up right around Valentine's Day. It's February 14th. I like to let my fruit normally hang on the tree a little bit longer because they normally sweeten up. Also, if you cut it lengthwise, it does look like a heart, and it's red on the inside too. So there's probably 3 reasons why they called it Valentine. But again, this one doesn't have any bitterness like a grapefruit would, and excellent flavor. It's not a real thick rind, so you can peel it relatively easily. And it's just gorgeous look and great flavor. It has very few seeds, might have a few, but usually not too many. This is a true pomelo called the Chandler, and you can see that the rind on this can be an inch, maybe even more. They are a little bit difficult to peel. You usually have to slice the rind off, and then you get to the heart of it. But they're good. It's kind of a dry. It's not real juicy, but it's a good one. And they can be huge, almost the size of a shot put.
Isn't the Chandler the most common
Yes.
pomelo right now?
Yeah, the comment was that Chandler would probably be the most common pomelo in the marketplace. Well, there's this one. It's a little bit dark, but it's about 6 to 7 inches in diameter. Dancing mandarin. This is one of the mandarins that's been around for a long time. They call this one the Christmas tangerine or Christmas mandarin, and it's actually an heirloom fruit. And the definition of an heirloom means that it's been around for a couple generations at least. And also the definition of an heirloom means that if you plant the seeds, it comes true. So most citrus are grafted, but you can plant the seed of some of them, like Dancy, and you will get a Dancy tree. It will come true from seed. As far as it might be a stronger tree if you graft it onto rootstock like trifoliate orange or something like that. But the fact is that it is, I like the flavor of these because it's kind of, in my opinion, a true tangerine flavor. kind of a balance of sweet and tart. Pixie is a great out of hand eating tangerine. Does make a good juice too. But very sweet. They're almost like candy. They don't tend to be very big when they are mature, but has a great flavor.
And this one has a little pooch at the end usually, and it's very easy to peel.
Yeah, very easy to peel and always seedless.
Yes.
And I do have a little video about the Pixie. It's only about 5 minutes. So James, if you want to go ahead and cue that up.
Yeah, roll in the hand and the skin fall.
Almost, yeah.
What is it?
When you have a special crop that grows in a special place, well, you have to handle it in a special way. Here near the central coast of California, one group of farmers has gotten together to market some of these small, sweet, and tasty tangerines, appropriately called pixies.
Oh, let me share that with the Zoom as well.
In a special place, well, you have to handle it in a special way. Here near the central coast of California, one group of farmers has gotten together to market some of these small, sweet, and tasty tangerines, appropriately called pixies. When you look at them, the name seems to fit. Small and sweet tasting, they're easily the pixie members of the citrus family. Some say it's like growing candy on a tree.
And kids love that because you don't have that tang that you know, Mineolas or Navels tend to have. They're just super sweet. They're like candy.
Most fruits, grains, and vegetables have been around for hundreds, even thousands of years. But these hybrid, seedless mandarin pixies were developed less than 100 years ago, with commercial production only getting underway in the 1960s. Pixies like year-round cool days and warm nights, which is why California's Ojai Valley, just east of Santa Barbara, has become Pixie Central for growers of this specialty fruit.
Pixie tangerines can be grown anywhere in the world, but they're not going to develop good flavor everywhere in the world. Much like wine grapes, you know, taste better if grown in Napa versus Stockton.
Emily Thatcher Ayala is a fifth-generation Ojai farmer. Her father, Tony, raised a tangerine variety called Dancy's along with other citrus for market. With no commercial demand, however, he reserved his pixies for family and friends.
So do you think we can get him to wait?
The customers?
Yeah. I'd like to wait until May.
Why don't we?
But here in the valley, the Pixies' profile was about to change. Enter Jim Churchill and his wife, Lisa Brennies. After leaving a big city career, Jim returned to his hometown of Ojai in 1979. He was looking for a new challenge and found it after trying one of Tony Thatcher's pixies.
And I just said, Tony, what is this? And he said, that's a pixie tangerine. And I said, well, do you sell them? And he said, well, I only have 2 trees, and by the time I'm done selling all the Dancies, then my kids have eaten all the pixies. And that was market research.
Acres of trees were planted the next year. Their efforts paid off following a taste test by the owners of a specialty food market in Northern California.
He just thought, this is good, you know?
Yeah.
And so by the end of the phone call, he bought 1,000 pounds, more than we had ever sold to anyone.
The growing demand for the juicy jewels energized an eclectic group of established and first-time farmers.
All the growers are different. You know, we've got doctors and lawyers who have a couple acres of pixies in their backyard. And then we have some growers that have 10 acres.
They formed the Ojai Pixie Growers Association to share information about raising, harvesting, and marketing the fruit.
We both looked at the fact that there were all these other people that had tangerines coming on, and we thought that it would be better if all the tangerine growers worked together.
Pixie trees take 4 years to bear their first commercial crop, with heavy harvests available only every other year.
This tree has a lot of fruit on it, as you can see, but it has no blossoms for next year. It's spending all of its energy growing fruit for this year, and so it's not going to make any fruit for next year.
As a part of their marketing efforts, growers here ship only as the fruit ripens on the tree.
We want them to be on store shelves, within 10 days of being picked, whereas some of the other citrus you see in grocery stores has been a month.
Pixies have proven a favorite with several high-profile chefs, and the fruit has earned a Best of the West vote from the foodies at Sunset Magazine.
I like that we produce something, and I like that we produce something that people like.
I love being able to take my favorite food and give it to people and put a smile on their face and know that they're getting something that's good for them.
Presented by Freshly.
Sorry about the technical hiccup there. A little bit of problem there, but any questions or comments on that short video? Brought up a couple of good points. If you remember, she said that some citrus, like Pixie, are biennial producers, which means that you're only going to get a big crop every other year. The tree basically takes a rest every other year, so you get a few fruit, but you won't get a bumper crop. Now we'll come to another hybrid that UCR developed in a minute, but it's very Pixie-like, and it is called Gold Nugget. It's one of my favorites. We'll come up to that in a minute. So here's the parentage of Pixie, and it's kind of a back cross of several, and it was developed in about 1965. But a lot of good attributes, that's for sure. And even though they're growing it in Ojai, you can grow it just as well here in San Diego. I have very good success with it. Okay, so yeah, this is the one I was mentioning. Gold Nugget is very much like Pixie. And I think if I had to just pick one tangerine, I would go with Gold Nugget. It's absolutely fantastic. And the thing about Gold Nugget is the longer you can let it hang on the tree, the sweeter it tends to get. So I sometimes will let, this one I picked this afternoon. It could be eaten right now, but it's not at its peak, I'd say. So if I let this go till, let's say, June, July, even August, it's still hanging on the tree for me, and it gets sweeter as you go. As opposed to some of them, like the Satsumas, if you don't pick those within a couple of weeks, they kind of explode on you. They're just no good at all. Jose, did you have a comment?
Yeah, it's so true about the biennial.
Biennial?
Yeah, last year it was, but this year the branches are all falling to the ground.
Right.
They haven't break, but it's loaded this year. I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, not every citrus produces every other year, but some do. Yeah, no comment.
Pixie, if you leave it for almost a year, it becomes like a sugar.
Sugar, yeah.
Best.
Yeah, it's worth waiting for.
It's kind of hard.
Some of the citrus, yeah.
Is this biennial?
Virtually seedless.
I found with the Gold Nugget, yeah, you do get a bigger crop every other year, but you still get something every year.
Yeah.
And of course, things depend on the weather too. If you had a lot of rain, you're going to have lot of fruit. I know with my Kishu, this year they were all small, and I've talked with a lot of other people that are growing Kishu. We'll talk about the Kishu variety in a minute, but they say they're all small too. Now, could have I thinned the fruit out maybe when they were small, maybe, but last year they were big and a lot of them. This year they're small and there's a lot, so it depends on the weather too. All right, so here's the parentage of it. And again, it says right there, Pixie-like flavor, alternate bearing. All right, this is one a lot of people are excited about. I don't have this particular one. Hopefully I can get some budwood from UCR this year and graft some on my trees, but it's the sumo mandarin. You're starting to see these in the stores, and they do grow them in the Central Valley of California. They have a lot of acreage. It has there's a big fruit. You can see this is an average sized hand here. The fruit is large and has this big neck on there. But I have tasted them. They're very good, easy to peel, seedless. I'd say a very unique flavor, refreshing. Does anybody grow this one? Or?
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I got a lot of budwood, and I'm a higgledy-piggledy grafter, and I don't keep really good records and tags on my tree. Well, when I moved to my house, I have a sweet orange tree. So I had just grafted it on the top, and the tag had fallen off, and I'd forgotten all about it. This year I was picking oranges, and I found a rotten one on top of the tree, and I just yanked it off, and it looked like this.
Oh.
My sumo dog! And there was one more on there, so I waited a little bit, and when I had ripped it off, I had done a little damage to the twig that had started, but I babied it. And we had guests over when I picked it, and we sliced it into 14 pieces. And it was so delicious. And so I have other little the rootstock.
Trifoliate orange.
Trifoliate,
Right.
ready to go. But it was a little stuff this big with 3 leaves, and they were yellow. So I just cut every other branch on that thing. And so I have this big hole in my tree with one little stem like this. And I waited, I swear, a month and a half, babying little leaves and shoots to grow. And there must be like 20 little shoots.
Wonderful.
Right.
Does Dave grow that across the street from you? Does Dave Archer grow it across the street from
I
you?
have no idea. But I'm just so happy to have it.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get the grafting material now.
She's down in Bonita, Chula Vista area,
So just everybody's.
Proctor Valley Road area.
Right, well, thanks for
Cool,
sharing.
thank you.
That's a great positive report there. Very good. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good reports about sumo.
Right about Christmas.
Right, ripens about Christmas. Okay, excellent. This is one that not too many people have, but it's the Lee Mandarin. I believe it's a Tangor, so it's a cross between a tangerine and an orange. But real good flavor. It doesn't peel so well, and it does have seeds, but it's has a lot of real good juice, very unique flavor. So I do have that. You see, it's a pretty good size
Nice,
fruit.
good average Mandarin.
And they're ripe now, but very unique flavor. So that's a Lee.
Interesting.
Page is another one that in good flavor. I found that it's not seedless all the time, makes good juice. So just another variety of mandarin. They each kind of have their own place. Tango, I brought a lot of tango in today, and you can all have at least one. Maybe there's enough for 2 on the way out, but you can see nice big fruit. This was developed at, again, University of California, Riverside a few years ago. Seedless, easy to peel, great flavor. It's an all-around winner. Some of the farmers are growing tango in their fields, but they're marketing it as delight or cuties. So usually when they pick them, they're not as big as the ones I'm growing. The cuties are smaller, but you do find those marketed as delight or cutie. That's not a real name. The real name is tango. And
it's just that they're not as mature.
Exactly. They pick them a little bit earlier. And when they use a name like delight or cuties, that means since it's not a real variety, they can substitute another variety for that. And the consumer still knows it as cutie or whatever. So if the tangos are not ripe at that moment, then they can substitute another mandarin.
And Tango is one of the more recent, very popular varieties
Yeah.
within 10 years.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a new introduction. And it's actually a bud mutation of honey murcott, which I also grow. And the difference is that murcott has seeds and Tango never has seeds, even if it's pollinated by bees or if there's another citrus tree nearby, it will never have seeds.
Cool. For time, we're 8 o'clock. Just wanted to
Okay,
let you know.
thanks. Yeah, I'll try to step it up here. This is one I don't think anybody else in San Diego is growing, but I have this one. It's Venus Sodia. It is the main commercial variety from Morocco. Good flavor. Seeded, peels well. Temple is a really nice one too. It has a real kind of a sharp flavor. This is Temple right here. You can see it's a good big orange. It's a beautiful color. It's a real dark orange. But Temple was used in a lot of crosses to get other things. So even though it might not be as popular as a fruit on its own, it is a parent of a lot of.
And the Temple is an orange, not a mandarin. Correct.
Right. It's crossed with, I think, an orange and a mandarin.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time, but there's a couple. UCR did put out a few mandarins they call TDEs, where they cross, like I mentioned, the Temple with the Dancy, and then another one called Encore. And they came up with a couple good varieties. One is Shasta Gold. All of these from this cross are seedless, easy to peel, good flavor. So if you get a chance to get Shasta Gold, that's a good one. Tahoe Gold is another good one. Very similar to each other, but slight difference. And then Yosemite Gold. And these are all just within the last 10 years have been, you can see that tree's loaded. So.
Are they seedless?
Yeah, they're seedless, easy to peel, good flavor, juicy.
There's the great one, right?
Yeah, Caracara is a lot of people, this is their favorite.
Kind of a
The
reddish.
nice thing
green.
about it, it's pink on the inside and it does have a navel on the end. Very similar to a navel.
Quite sweet.
Quite sweet. It has, I think, like maybe strawberry or raspberry
Right.
overtones to it. So a lot of people rave about.
I
this flavor.
like the Caracara.
All right, Dave, Sean, okay. There's a few blood oranges. Moro is one of the more well-known ones. I don't particularly like the blood oranges so much. I think they're too tart for me, but if you make a juice, you could add one of these to your orange juice and it turns it reddish pink. Let's see, go back. One more. Okay, a couple other ones. The Tarraco is a good blood orange, a little bit sweeter than Moro. And what I really am impressed with is this one that was discovered in 1994 by a gentleman in Lindsay, California. His name is Bob Breen. And so it's known as the Breen Tarraco. And this thing is completely red. I mean, there's no orange in it at all. The outside skin is red, the inside is a blood red. But this is from Lindsay, California, which gets a little bit colder nights than we do here. So some fruits like grapefruits and the green orange, they need that cool night in order to get the red color.
But where is Lindsay's?
It's in the central
Central
I
Valley.
believe it's Central California.
I have a Toronto colors, it's pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I've been there, it's-
Okay. All right. All right, K for lime is one of the more unusual ones where you normally use the fruit, you use the leaves in cooking to give that Thai flavor. Now you can use the zest of the fruits. It has a weird looking bumpy type fruit, but really no juice per se, and it's very bitter, I'd say. So normally only the zest, the outside is used, or the leaves.
And tea.
Tea, right? Australian finger limes, one of my favorites. They,
Almost looks like roe.
yeah, it's also known as, was it lime caviar?
Right,
Because
lime caviar.
When you open it up,
Like roe.
and the little sacks look like caviar. So super intense lime flavor. The top chefs are using the Australian finger limes in their gourmet meals and things like that. Good flavor. So I like it a lot. And there's an interesting thing about this Australian finger lime that I'll talk about it in a few minutes, but that may be the answer to the disease. Yeah, the citrus greening disease. This might be the cure right here. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Bear's lime. This is a great all-around purpose lime. My Bear's limes have fruit on them almost 365 days out of the year. They just
Very
produce and
prolific.
produce. I mentioned the sweet lime a little bit before. These have no bitterness, no bitterness, no sourness, and no sweetness.
No flavor.
Yeah, it's kind of a bland thing.
They're very refreshing,
But
but
yeah, so
they're not much to them.
Yeah, I find the best thing to do with them is use them as a juice
Yeah.
or mix them in with another type of tangerine juice or orange juice. But I also grow the sweet lemon, which is this one. Looks very similar to the sweet lime, but it has this bottom nipple on it.
They call it sweet lemon.
This is the sweet lemon here, as opposed to the sweet lime. This is a sweet lime.
Well, then I must have both of them because I have one with a nipple
Yeah.
and one without,
Yeah.
and they're both sweet.
So I enjoy Earl Grey tea a lot, and I don't have a bergamot. I'd like to get one in the future, but I don't have one. But what they found is that if you use the rind or the zest of this one in like regular black tea, then it basically turns it into something very similar to bergamot tea. Because the fact is, Earl Grey tea uses bergamot citrus to flavor their tea. The majority of bergamot is grown in Italy, and they almost have kind of a monopoly on it as far as bergamot, putting it into perfumes and tea. All right, this is another one that people are kind of excited about, the yuzu lemon. A lot of the top chefs are using this in their desserts and things like that.
A lot of seeds in it.
It does have seeds, but it does have a very unique flavor, different than any other citrus. So let's talk a little bit about the kumquats. They're one of the smallest of the citrus fruit, not the smallest, but commercially the smallest of any economic importance, I would say. The one I like is the miwa. It's 10 times sweeter than the other one. It has a round fruit. The leaves are a little bit different shape than the nagami. But I enjoy the miwa. This is the miwa that I picked today. You can see it's almost perfectly round as opposed to a nagami, which is egg shaped.
Miwa skin is edible.
Oh, they both are. In fact, with kumquats, the outside skin is more
Sweet
sweet than the inside.
Yeah, roll them in your hand. Roll them in your hand.
Yeah.
Get the oil and the juice out, and then just pop the whole thing in your mouth and bite it.
Yeah, it's like taking a vitamin C. It is, yeah. So here's the other kumquat nagami, which is a lot harder than the Miwa. If you like the nagami, but you don't like the seeds in there, you could get a Nordman seedless. And this is a photo that I took a few years ago when I visited.
I've never seen the Norseman.
Yeah, it's the fruit is gonna look just like the nagami, but it's not gonna have any seeds in it. Same kind of flavor. It might be a little bit sweeter, but not too much. It was a nagami. There is a third one that I do grow. It's fukushu kumquat, and it's almost like a halfway point between nagami and miwa. It's not as sour as nagami, but it's not as sweet as the miwa in my opinion.
Round leaf, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rather than elliptical.
Right. All your looks like we're passing around some kumquats. Are those nagamis?
Yes.
Okay.
Delicious. Thank you.
Then it should all together.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Pop that thing and keep chewing and have this.
Now there are, not right now. Thanks. There are a few hybrids that they've done, which are kind of interesting. They're commonly available in most nurseries. The lime quat, where they cross the lime with the kumquat. So again, with this one, it's kind of a lime flavor, but the peel is sweeter than the inside.
Is that the same size as a kumquat?
Yeah, I know it's actually a little bit bigger than the kumquat, but not as big as lime.
But you did the same way.
Yeah, you can eat the skin on this one too.
Wow.
And then I also have a mandarin quat, and where they cross the mandarin with the kumquat. These are much larger than the kumquats, but not as big as the mandarin. James.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is an interesting tree that they have at UCR in the collection. It's the desert lime.
Almost like a weeping willow.
Yeah. The leaves are a lot smaller and they're thicker than normal citrus trees.
They don't have the double petiole on it, on the leaf.
No, they don't. When I examined these fruits, they didn't have much juice in them. They were kind of a gummy type substance. So they're used in cosmetics and maybe perfumes, that kind of thing. But the interesting thing about this one is that it's extremely drought tolerant. It comes from the interior outback part of Australia where they get no water at all. And so what scientists are attempting to do is cross some of our citrus with this one in order to get a drought tolerant, something we can maybe grow in deserts, things like that. So it's kind of interesting. So this is my list of, since I grow like 40 to 50 different varieties, if I had to pick 7 of them, these are kind of my favorite. The kishu is a small fruit, but very sweet, easy to peel. Pop them in your mouth just like candy, no seeds, that kind of thing. So I love that one. Cocktail hybrid is a great flavor, makes a great juice. Of all the tangerines, I think Gold Nugget, in my opinion, is the best. It's like pixie-like, but it's bigger. And again, if they hang on the tree longer, they get sweeter with age. Finger limes, I like a lot, just because they're interesting. If I had to choose a Pumelo, I'd go with Chandler because of the flavor. And then for a lemon, an all-around good lemon is the common Meyer improved lemon. But this is just my opinion. You may think a little bit differently as to what your favorites are, but you can't go wrong with any citrus. I think they're good all around. So just a minute or two on rootstocks. If you want to have a true dwarf citrus, something that's only going to get like 3 or 4 feet tall, then go with flying dragon. And that's what it looks like if it's allowed to grow up. So basically, the only part that is used is the bottom here, from here down the roots, and then you graft onto the top of it, and then you get a tree that looks like this. Did you have a comment?
The cocktail grapefruit is the same as cocktail that is crafted with the orange and with the tomato. It has a medium seed in there.
Yeah, cocktail, the question was about cocktail grapefruit. It's a hybrid between a mandarin and a pomelo. So it's got a unique flavor to it. Hope that answers the question. But if you want a full-size tree, then there's quite a few rootstocks you can
Well,
choose.
there's actually 3 different sizes mainly.
Okay,
You have your standard, which is the big
right.
tree, and the flying dragon is the littler, the very small, and then there's one that is right in the middle. I can't think of the name of the rootstock.
Yeah, some of the well-known ones are trifoliate orange. That's a good one. It does, you know, it's more drought tolerant, takes heavy soils, it's disease resistant, that kind of thing. Another one is rough lemon, but there are quite a few others, yeah. So if you, a lot of times people will come to me and say that they planted a certain tree. Let's say they planted a Dancy tangerine, but after a couple of years, they noticed that they started to get fruit that was real sour, like a lemon. And they asked, what happened? You know, how come I'm not getting Dancy tangerines off my tree anymore? The real answer, 9 times out of 10, is that the upper part of the tree that was the Dancy tangerine scion died, and what was below the ground, the rootstock took over, because it was a lot stronger. And so what do you do in a case like that? You can get some budwood from UCR and you can graft on another variety that you like. It's up to you. There's 300 different varieties. Yeah, question.
Are Australian finger limes compatible with regular citrus rootstocks?
I believe so, but I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm not. Yeah.
I remember Tom Dell Hotel advised me after quite a few failures. It's best to graft limes and lemons on lime trees.
Right.
They do best. You have a better chance at it taking and thriving.
Right, because they're probably more compatible because they're more closely related genetically. Yeah. This was mentioned not too long ago, citrus leaf miner. It's a little insect that burrows itself in between the 2 layers of the leaf, a bottom layer and the top. So, and it does these little patterns here, almost like a miner going through a cave or something. This is basically a problem that is kind of just, what is it, ornamental for looks. So it really doesn't, it's not going to kill your tree. And the problem with it, since it's sandwiched in between the 2 leaf layers, normally if you put any type of chemical on here, it doesn't affect them. But neem oil does seem to work, especially if this little insect is on the outside. But I believe neem oil is able to penetrate the skin a little bit. Otherwise, you can use a systemic type chemical that actually goes into the leaf and kills this. Otherwise, I tend to, it usually only affects the new growth, the new flush of growth. So you can clip those off and then and then hope for the next flush of leaves not to have it. Did you have a question?
Yeah, if your tree is small, you can actually just go with your fingers and just squish them.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I did not hear
Yeah,
that.
so if you have a, if you have like a dwarf or a semi-dwarf, you can do that. And then The neem oil, my understanding is that you need to do it like when, because they do attack mostly the young leaves. And usually
Right,
when
right.
the young leaves first come out, they haven't gotten on there yet. So if you put the neem oil on, I think they don't get into the leaves to begin with.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's a great comment, the squishing.
And
The
November to January is the best time to spray your neem oil, and as long as you don't have rain in between or sprinkler or something, because that'll wash it off.
Right.
I did a lot of researching on the
Oh, there we go. There's our psyllid.
Okay, so here's the big threat here, Australian citrus psyllid. And I think Dave was mentioning what these guys look like. They're only about 1/8 of an inch in length, and they tend to, you can see they put their nose down and the rear end goes up. So it's kind of a weird type thing, but they suck the juices out of the leaf. And the problem with the citrus industry is not necessarily this insect, but it is a vector for the citrus greening disease. And so this little insect transmits it.
Yeah.
The next slide. Okay. So when you buy a citrus tree from a local nursery, whether it be a big box store or the local nursery, you'll see a tag on it, and that is a tag saying that they did a soil drench with this chemical. And that usually protects the tree from the Asian citrus psyllid for 3 or 4, 6 months. And so if it has that tag, it's usually either a yellow or blue tag on it, then you can transport it to your house and plant it. It's safe to do so. But we are in a quarantine. Here's the long bean, HLB for short. You can see some of the symptoms of it. It's a blotchy mottle. That's what it looks like. Now, sometimes it's can get confused with a nutrient deficiency. This might be a nutrient deficiency in zinc or magnesium or manganese, something like that. It looks a little bit different, but to the untrained eye, you might think that you have HLB, but really you just need to feed your citrus to get these leaves a solid green. And you can see the fruit size is a lot smaller. Sometimes you'll see a fruit that will be half green.
Mottled skin.
Yeah, the skin will be half green and half yellow with a real definite line between the two. So that's what we're trying to avoid is the HLB. And this is from 2011, and you can see where they had some distribution of the psyllid. Now look at a more updated one.
Yeah.
This is where they've actually established the Asian citrus psyllid in these areas where they have been found or detected, all the way up here, even into Nevada County of California. But yeah, it seems to be going northward. And that's why, where it's established, you're not supposed to move citrus. Now, it's okay to move fruit, but you're not allowed to move branches, leaves, even the stems on the top of the fruit. I've removed all those when I brought my fruit in, because you're not supposed to bring any stems or leaves.
So no scions for grafting.
Right, that's why we used to be able to exchange scions to graft. So I'll talk a little bit about the program, the citrus clonal protection program. That really is the only safest way and the only legal way to get budwood right now because of this disease.
And UCR is really about the only place you can get.
Yeah, UCR here in Riverside. Okay, so I promised you that there might be a new hope for citrus, and it involves the finger lime. Because what they found, this is recent, and there were some scientists from UCR that did the studies, but they found that if you take the finger limes and you grind them up, and basically there's a peptide in here that if you spray it on a infected tree that has an HLB, then it can actually cure it. And you can see this is 6 months, 12 months after 6 sprays. This is the untreated trees right here. They have HLB, and these are the ones that had HLB, and they've been sprayed 6 times. You can see luxuriant growth, whatnot. And the way this works is there's a helical type peptide, which is a type of a protein. That's the name of it right there. And this is a cell under a microscope of the HLB bacteria. And you can see that it's leaking fluid out of the cell. The cytoplasm is leaking out here and wherever there's an arrow. And so this peptide that's sprayed goes right into the leaf, and it punctures somehow the cells of the HLB bacteria, and then that cures it. So this
It acts as an inoculant.
inoculant too. It protects them from getting it again, and if they had it already, it makes them better. The nice thing about it, it's an all organic spray. We're not talking about spraying DDT or anything like that. This is a fruit that they grind up and they somehow concentrate it, and then they spray it on an existing citrus tree and it cures it. So
One additional thing on
it's
that
exciting.
is,
Go ahead.
they are now, the researchers have found a clone which sterilizes the Hong Kong bee and the silk, the little moth. And what they're doing is they're developing that and trying to inoculate the trees with that so that they're shooting blanks basically.
Okay.
And they're not able to propagate.
Very good. That's all exciting news.
Yeah. Because right now they've been spraying in Florida, they're spraying 7 times a year. Tom Del Hotel used to talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
They're spraying 7 times a year with a very deadly toxic.
Yeah, that's not good for the environment.
Not good for the environment, not good for your body or anything.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And in vain, because they're having to simply, after a while, many times simply replant their orchards, and with the expectation that in 3 or 4 years, we'll have to replant them again. It's absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're talking about billion-dollar industries.
Oh, yeah.
The citrus industry. Yeah.
Well, Texas with the grapefruit, Florida with the orange juice, California with a different fruits.
Okay, so this is the CCPP program that I alluded to a few minutes ago, Citrus Clonal Protection Program. So in Riverside, city of Riverside, they are able to go back. Yeah, so they're able to test the budwood to make sure it doesn't have HLB. And they have all sorts of equipment and screened houses so that no insects can get into. So basically, it's a program where anybody, and our club has ordered from them in the years past. We've all pooled our requests, and then you get an order. Basically, you'll get sticks of branches from UCR. And they'll all be labeled, and they'll have buds on there. Usually it's 6 buds per stick. And then what you do is you have to put in the time to do a little bit of grafting. It's normally tea budding or chip budding. So for instance, you'll get a stick and you'll remove this little part right here from the stick that you get from UCR, and you'll cut a slice into your existing tree, this is the mother plant right here. And you'll put this little bud inside, and then you'll wrap it with paraffin or
Rubber bands.
whatever you choose. Yeah, it's your choice. And then this little bud, the cambium layers will touch each other here, and they'll grow together. And usually doesn't take too long, and then this bud will take off. Yeah, and then you'll have a new plant. So then once it takes off after a while, then you're going to go ahead and cut this right here, and you let this branch take over. That will be the dominant branch, so you have a new tree. You're able to plant or graft as many varieties on citrus that you want. There's really no limit. You can do 2, 3, 4, as many as you want. You have what's called a cocktail of citrus. You can have 9 or 10 on there if you want, different varieties. But yeah.
What's the best time of year to do that?
Oh, good question. When's the best time of year to do it? I found that May and June, those 2 months are perfect. I took a tour of Durling's nursery, who is one of the major nurseries out of Fallbrook that supplies most of the citrus to the nurseries, and they were doing it in May and June only, basically. But they do thousands of buds.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands at that time. But it's not to say that you might not have a successful one if you do it in July or February. It could take. Question over there?
Yeah, you mentioned something about feeding citruses.
Feeding them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do need to be fed. It depends on your soil. Usually what I find with citrus, it's not the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the big three. Normally our soils in San Diego have all those, but it's the micronutrients that they tend to lack sometimes. That would be things like iron, zinc, copper, magnesium, manganese, those kind of things. So I would recommend, if your tree doesn't have dark, shiny green leaves, then get a foliar micronutrient feed. And you're going to mix that with water, and you can either use a watering can or a sprayer, hose end sprayer, whatever, tank sprayer, whatever. And you're going to actually spray your leaves, because if you do it by leaves, by foliar, then those micronutrients can go into the leaf in a matter of days and green those up. If you do a soil drench with micronutrients, it might take months for the roots to take it up and go and cure your nutrient deficiency.
Those, when you go
Foliar feed, yeah.
foliar feed, at least one place that said you should do it like right before sunset or something
Yeah.
like that.
You don't want to do it in the heat of the day because it could burn them. So evening or early morning, yeah. Which is true of any of your sprays. If you're going to spray for bugs, you want to do that, not in the cool part of the day.
West wind.
I guess that's the end. You're welcome to come up here and take a look at the different samples of fruits that I've